Chargers training camp is heating up, and it was clear on day 2 that the winners were the defense, and it seems like all of these new pieces might be coming together a little quicker than we thought.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together for over 6 seasons. We're headed into our 5th season as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. But it's training camp, and David decided to go up for 2 days in a row to Chargers training camp, and one thing that came out was it seemed like the defense was on the winning side of things when he went up there on Thursday. So we have to get into some of the defensive standouts and Joey Bosa talking about one position we're maybe not talking about enough, but then we'll get into Joe Lombardi talking about all of the different position battles and where things stands right now. He had a lot of nice things to say about Donald Parham, Josh Palmer, Trey McKitty, maybe somebody who people aren't talking about enough, and he also talked about knowing that tackle and running back and how that shakes out are the two things that they're watching most closely. But David, would you say that's a fair assessment? You were up in Costa Mesa at Jack Hammett Sports Complex, and you got to watch day 2 of Chargers training camp. Did you say that the Chargers defense won the day today?
Definitely. The Chargers defense came out and was firing. They were very energetic. They were in tight coverage all day long. From every 11-on-11, 7-on-7 period, they were glued to these wide receivers. They seemed like they were attached at the hip. They really played with a lot of fire, and it was up and down. It was guys batting down passes at the line of scrimmage. Chris Rumpf had a great play doing that. You had Drew Tranquil having some very good coverage over the middle on Mike Williams. You had, Tavon Campbell even having some very good coverage on Josh Palmer on a kind of a deep, go route out, which, was fantastic. I mean, you can just really tell that early on in camp, the defense, it seems like, with all of these different pieces, that at least obviously without any pads on, it seems like they are very comfortable playing with each other. And this is a very, very good thing for the Chargers.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I think obviously at this point of training camp, you're learning about certain positions, especially a lot more than others, right? This is a part of training camp that much more lends itself to corners, receivers, safeties, running backs, quarterbacks, right? With the big dudes up front, that's going to have a lot to do with when the pads get on, right? And how you can start assessing those guys. But the assessment has already started. So it is nice to see, some young players stepping up and making big plays, some guys fighting for roster spots at the end of the roster, stepping up and making big plays, some rookies making big plays. But I mean, Daniel Popper, this is how he put it. He said that Herbert had an incomplete pass on his first 3 attempts of 7-on-7. One point he was just standing there with no one open for like 5 seconds. And then I guess the defense is like, hey, that's a sack now. We don't have anyone out there that can sack him because it's basically passing league, but he would have been sacked by now. And then, there's probably no bigger thing than Keenan Allen. I mean, who said it best probably when he said, the defense is already looking like a 360 team that kicked our ass today, which is a good thing. Hopefully we can keep building on it. So I'll definitely take his word for it.
Oh yeah. You should, because like I said, those guys were out there getting mugged. The receivers did not have a lot of very productive plays. There was a couple. There was a couple of really nice plays. Like Mike Williams caught a really nice pass over the middle from Justin Herbert, which, had coverage that was pretty much glued to him. But Mike Williams did what he does. He makes contested catches, and, he kept on going. That was a nice play. And then there was a really deep play to Donald Parham for a big touchdown. There's a couple of clips of that out there that honestly, that one looked good, and it got you really excited for what he is capable of doing. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later.
For sure. I mean, it's nice to always see those things, but it seemed like the offensive good parts of the day were very few and far between, at least from everything I've read and from everything that you told me. So it is nice because what it means, David, is hey, they're coming together because a lot of this is
Yeah.
done, 7-on-7, 11-on-11. There's no Derwin James out there. So
No.
it's like if you're doing that with those guys, with Alohi Gilman in there, subbing Tavon Campbell, Michael Davis in there, you got rookie corners in there, and they're still being connected enough to have a day that good defensively. That still is saying something, even though obviously with no pads, training camp you have to take with a grain of salt.
You do for sure, because, hey, at the end of the day, this game is played with pads on in a physical nature, and you just can't really do that. You can't replicate that when
Right.
you're out here with a training camp jersey on and some shorts. You want to make sure that you're keeping your teammates healthy, and
Of
that's
course.
honestly a large reason why there was a difference in the turnout this year in OTAs, because they saw how it was run last year, and they understood that there was a much bigger focus on keeping these guys healthy. They felt good coming out here. They felt comfortable and confident. And it seems like the fact that they were able to all come out to these organized team activities and these voluntary workouts, that it is paying dividends now that we get them in camp, because the defense is really, really gluing. They're really connected. They feel like they've been together for a long period of time. They feel very comfortable with each other. And when you add pieces, not just to one area, but to pretty much every single level of the defense, and they're already having this much success, that only bodes well for that confidence rolling into Monday when they put the pads on for the first time.
Yeah, and that'll tell you a lot more about even like the linebackers and stuff. But Joey Bosa did say they are coming together, quicker than he thought. He also said how cool it is to have guys who have won Super Bowl championships willing to come to your team in free agency, because that means, hey, they think they can continue that. They think they can go for it again with your team. But I did think he brought up a good point about the edge rushers, basically just saying that with Kyle Van Noy being a middle linebacker right now and that taking all of his snaps, like some of these young dudes have to step up. And he said Chris Rump, Jamal Davis, Ty Shelby, Carlo Kemp. I think they're all working hard. Emeka Egbule is coming back. I think it's his 4th year now. We're going to need those guys to step up with Kenneth Murray out, with Kyle Van Noy going to middle linebacker. We're definitely going to need it. He did say that Rumpf is not a string bean anymore. Now he's an asparagus stock on it, what you were going for yesterday. But did also say he thought Chris Rumpf was going to be a big part of his defense. But the part I want to focus on here, David, is we weren't sure how much of an option, right? That 5th edge rusher, if you're including Kyle Van Noy as an edge rusher,
Yeah.
how much that spot was really available if they would keep 5, right?
Yeah.
Now it seems like that spot is very up for grabs. And you do have guys like Jamal Davis, right? Or Ty Shelby, an undrafted free agent, Carlo Kemp coming from the USFL. And they have, one of these dudes has a good shot, including, an incumbent in Emeka Egbule who's still been hanging around on the practice squad. Like, that is very much a spot that seems like it'll be able to be earned by one of these young guys.
Well, yeah, the door, we saw the door was cracked for that position. We when we were analyzing the roster, we saw that if there was anywhere where they could add a body, or they could, an undrafted guy could potentially make the roster, it was at edge. Now that we know that Kenneth Murray is, might not even be ready for the season, that opens up an opportunity for someone else to take that roster spot. So now that door that was just slightly ajar is now wide open, and it's ready for one of these guys to come in here and take that spot and earn their spot in the NFL.
And it's going to be super tough because this is a really, really deep team in a lot of areas. But with Kyle Van Noy moving, that is something that's going to take away from your depth there, right? Because the linebacker depth with Kenneth Murray's injury is a little bit in question right now, too, on how many players they're going to keep at that spot when they make their final cuts. But there's a lot up in the air for now. But I think now we do have at least a clearer picture on what could be available as an edge rusher, and also how quickly this defense is coming together. And Bosa said, hey, it's because we got a lot of smart players that we brought in here as well, and guys who have done it before. But there's no question about it. Like the Chargers, if they want it all to come together, if they want to truly contend, they're going to have to, come together, be that well-communicating group, and have the kind of defense that the Rams had in 2020 when they were one of the best teams. But we do have Joe Lombardi, who chimed in on some of these things as well, especially on the offense, and highlighted a couple players I think everyone would be excited about, because if the Chargers do want to make a Super Bowl run, right, or something like that, you are going to need guys like Donald Parham, Josh Palmer, Trey McKitty in year 2 to step up. But if you actually think the Chargers will make the Super Bowl, you go to betonline.net and put your money where your mouth is. That's the only place I'm placing my bets in right now. I'm itching for football season, so I've already dipped into the futures for the NFL, whether it's Brandon Staley for Coach of the Year, where the Chargers will finish in the AFC West, or Justin Herbert and his MVP bid. But we know football isn't truly back yet, but it doesn't mean you can't stop betting with betonline.net, because you can go with golfing, UFC, boxing, horse racing, esports, your favorite Vegas casino games. You can find everything at BetOnline, and what I love about it is they make it fun. There's always a ton of good prop bets. You can parlay, you can do live in-game betting to change your fortunes in real time, and I love that it always gives me a chance, and I love that it makes things like baseball a lot more interesting, even though, I do like baseball, but it's a lot I like it a lot more when I have something going on there, right? And it definitely makes it a lot more interesting. So make sure you guys head to BetOnline or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David. Well, we know that the defense has been playing well, right, so far, and it's probably won the first couple of days at training camp. And I think some people, that's led them to kind of question, okay, well, what about the offense, right? And I guess what the question here is, David, is just, are you giving more credit to the Chargers defense, or is there any concern that the offense hasn't been able to put it together yet when you have obviously so many great players?
I am not concerned about this at all. I'm not worried about the Chargers offense. This is pretty typical, honestly. If you go back to every training camp, it just seems like the defense catches on a little bit quicker than the offense. And hey, let's not forget that they're doing installs right now. They're trying to implement new plays and get comfortable with that, understand those assignments and the alignments, and making sure you're getting lined up properly. All that stuff is being taken into account. And also, they don't have any pads on. So, take it for what it is. It's nice to see that the defense is performing well, but I'm not concerned with a top 5 offense whatsoever. It's fine. It's very early. The pads will come on. The offense will get better. Everything is okay. The sky is not falling.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I think that narrative is a little bit of a straw man. I don't think people are really freaking out too much about the Chargers offense when you have a guy like Justin Herbert. But obviously, when you're going up against the players you are going up against now, with guys like Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson and Bryce Callahan, it's probably going to be a little tougher than it was last year when you were going up against the 29th ranked defense in the league, right? So things might have came a little bit more smoothly, even when the offense wasn't quite as, where it needed to be as far as them all getting on the same page and getting in tune with Joe Lombardi's offense. But yeah, I mean, it's going to go back and forth like this. There's going to be really good days for the offense, and there's going to be really good days for the defense. But I do think that there are some positive takeaways you can still come out of from the defense and the offense, even in a tough day. And Joe Lombardi did get to speak at a press conference today, and that was something we haven't seen from him in a while. So it was nice to see him back up there. But I did like what he had to say about Josh Palmer, because he's a guy we've been talking about and saying, we don't know how he's going to get the reps to do it, but if he can somehow get on the field enough, he could be in line for a breakout season. And when he was asked about him, he said he's a guy that's jumped out to us early. I think he keeps getting better and more confident, especially your first year as the offense gets installed. There's a volume aspect that can be overwhelming to a rookie. I think that part, but he's had that hurdle, so he'll just really be able to go out and play fast. He looked really good yesterday. I'll watch the film today. He's another guy, we keep saying this, I think we can get involved more. So, David, this is a guy that I think is poised to do much better than he did in his rookie season, but obviously it's going to come down to him right now and being able to secure that wide receiver 3 spot and find a way for them to not leave him off the field.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Palmer has been doing the absolute most that he has been possibly capable of since college. In college at Tennessee, he was catching passes from quarterbacks that will
hamstrung
never
for sure.
see the light of day again. They were very, very bad. And then he shows up at the Senior Bowl and he basically beats every top corner like a drum and was immediately put on the Chargers radar. And he took that same work ethic into every single practice, every single time. And that work ethic has really paid off with him performing in the big moments and then taking that into year 2, where he has an entire year of experience behind him. And he's going into an offense that was fantastic before, should be even better this year, with that comfortability in the offense and that chemistry getting better with Justin Herbert. Josh Palmer is a guy that you want to see succeed, and he puts the work in to succeed.
Yeah, and Keenan Allen said, about going into the second season in the NFL as a wide receiver and talked about what it is like making that transition going into year two. And he just said, hey, you're learning more about the angles. You're learning more about where your quarterback wants you, where your offensive coordinator wants you, and it gets you more on the same page. We know he's dedicated to taking passes from Justin Herbert after practice and just continuing to try to get on the same page. But it is different when you have guys out there who are putting hands on you as opposed to running against, ghosts in a secondary, just running, naked offense against no defense. It's a lot different than when guys are trying to reroute you or going to press you at the line of scrimmage, even with no pads on. Like that chemistry, that communication, that timing is going to take time. And that's what's all getting developed right here. But I did also like what he had to say about the tight ends. He had nice things to say about Trey McKitty and about Donald Parham. And he said, Donald Parham, he's a guy that I think can do a lot more than maybe we did last year. The hard part is you have a lot of players you want to get the ball to. And in Trey McKitty's case, he said pretty much the same things, that every time you're trying to work someone else a little bit more into the offense, you're taking away touches from wide receiver Mike Williams, from Keenan Allen, from Austin Eckler. He's more than capable to do it. We'll just see how it works in that progression. And I think it's a great point, David, just because it's like, I like both these guys too. I think Donald Parham should have a better year. I mean, Trey McKitty barely caught any passes last year, so I think he could surpass that. But it's not as easy as just like, hey, we're going to keep getting this guy more involved, because there are a ton of mouths to feed. So there can only be so many guys having a breakout season. It's Josh Palmer and Donald Parham and Trey McKitty, right? And Jalen Guyton. Like, I mean, it just can't be all those guys, because all of those targets are taking away from one of the other very, very talented offensive players that you have.
Yeah, even DeAndre Carter was getting a couple touches in training camp today on offense. So that's just another person that you have to account for potentially getting snaps. But honestly, I'm not too worried about it for Trey McKitty. And the reason for that is he's such a good blocker, and because he's on the field so much and he's blocking so much, he's going to get those play action opportunities. That's one thing that Joe Lombardi talked about is, yeah, we have him on the field all the time, but he's going to have to run some routes occasionally in those play action situations. And I think that's where he can make some money as a pass catcher, as a tight end. And for Donald Parham, the reach is ridiculous. The size is unteachable. It's something the Chargers did not exploit enough, and they should exploit more. He is a matchup nightmare. There are nobody in the league that has that kind of size to be able to cover him. So you got to use it, and the Chargers didn't do it enough, and hopefully he is out there and healthy, and they can do that a lot more, especially on third down and in the red zone.
Yeah, and what Joe Lombardi said about him as well is, I think his ability to go up and catch the ball, high point it, it's his height and size differential is really something that we want to tap into.
Yes.
And yeah, of course, when you have a physical freak like that, the dude's like 6'8", right, and can jump and can run like a 4.6. But I think it's you just don't want to see him only used as like, okay, hey, run a fade because we're near the goal line, right?
Yeah,
Find
true.
a way to get him in space, because the other thing he does is have super, super long legs. And when he catches the ball and he's running, he destroys a lot of angles. He's very hard to tackle.
He's hard to tackle, man.
He's hard to tackle when he's standing still. He's going to be very, very hard to tackle when he's running 4.6 past you,
He's
right?
deceptively quick, too.
He
He's really good ball skills in the open field.
For sure. And let's be honest. I mean, anything with Donald Parham at this point is gravy. I mean, the fact that he came back from the scary injury that he had in 2021 and just seeing him out there running around healthy and the want to and the passion still being there.
Love it.
After having an injury, really, that probably makes you question everything. All props to Donald Parham. And even though, yes, there's a lot of mouths to feed, I mean, it's very easy to see why they'd want to get someone like him more involved. Joe Lombardi also complimented his run blocking, and that's obviously going to be something that helps him. But let's be honest, he's a split out, super huge wide receiver, and that still has major value in the modern NFL. And I'm excited to see in year 3 for him, 10 catches, 20 catches. Maybe he goes for 30 this year. I'm excited to see how it goes, because we know he could get 40. 6-7 touchdowns. See, David, you're doing the thing. How many people can break out? You can't have Gerald Everett catching 80, Donald Parham catching 40, Keenan Allen catching 105.
Such a
Mike
great
Williams
problem to
80.
have.
Totally, but there's only so much production to go around. But I mean, it's very, very, very good problem.
One football
to have. But everyone really wants to know, David, is what's the status on the fullback competition between Gabe Neighbors and Xander Horvath? Joe Lombardi did update us on how some of these big time position battles are going to play out, including running back and right tackle as well. So we're going to get into that coming up right after this. Will Xander Horvath and his sweet mustache find a way to edge out Gabe Neighbors as the team's tight end. David, that is something we're going to talk about. But Joe Lombardi did touch on a lot of the big things we've been talking about, and it did seem, to the most part, like we had it all right. We were right about everything. No, but I think it just shows you. I think one of the things that people forget, especially this time of year, is like with right tackle, it's like they also know it was a problem. I mean, they might not have had the urgency to go get a new one, but they know it's a problem. They know how bad
Better
it
believe
was
they
last
watched
year.
that tape. Yeah.
100%. And with the running backs as well, it kind of reconfirmed how I thought they felt about, Josh Kelly right now and maybe even Larry Roundtree, because when Joe Lombardi was asked about what the running back competition was like, he said, I expect to see growth from Larry Roundtree. He also said, hey, there's only so much you can do in pads. And even when you put pads on, nobody's getting taken down to the ground. So you can only learn so much from a physicality standpoint about these running backs. And I think that's probably what Larry Roundtree wants to be, as a physical running back. But he did say, I expect to see growth from running back Larry Roundtree mentally, just being more reliable from that perspective. I'll be excited to see what Isaiah Spiller is going to do. Obviously, we felt good about him as a prospect, so we see how he transitioned. And Josh Kelly, we know a little bit more about. It's another guy we feel good about. That'll be very important to see who rises and kind of wins that 2 spot. So we know it's an open competition. He's basically admitting such to everyone, right? He's saying, hey, after Austin Eckler, it could be any of these guys. But it does seem like right now it's still, Josh Kelly, number 2 behind Austin Eckler. Now Isaiah Spiller, 3. And even after some run today, I mean, you hear a comment like that, it's hard to think that, Isaiah Spiller might already be 3 going for 2, and it might have already even surpassed Larry Roundtree in that sense.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. And for Larry Roundtree, I mean, he was going into into the NFL for the first time and going into a new offense that was being installed for the first time. So there wasn't a lot of players around that could, say, hey, this is how you do this, because they were learning it right alongside him. So now that he's been through this offense for an entire year and hopefully use the offseason to get more comfortable and more confident in the playbook and understanding everything and going out there and playing fast, maybe he can go out there and put his best foot forward and be that physical running back that he wants to be. That room has to get fixed. I mean, there's no question it just was not good enough last year, and they need these guys to step up and really perform, and there's an opportunity to do it. Go out there and take that job because they want you to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, it's nice that Josh Kelly looks good early on in training camp, and Isaiah Spiller, that's going to come with some growing pains. So, he'll definitely have a chance to make his way up the roster. And for Larry Roundtree, I don't know how many, attempts he's even gotten yet to really show how much better he is in year 2. But I think there's a clear kind of hierarchy right now as to how this team sees things based on just how much they've been out there 2 days in, obviously.
Yeah.
And it just seems like right now, Larry Roundtree might be the odd man out.
Yeah.
Especially when you find out that Xander Horvath might be getting some carries just as a regular running back during the preseason. But it's so funny because it's like, I mean, a mile away when he was taken in the 7th round, it was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be one of those dudes. Everyone's going to get behind during training camp. And how can you not? The dude has pythons coming out of his training camp jersey.
Just guns.
Sweet mustache, totally looks the part. Just a huge dude for a running back, maybe a little thinner than most fullbacks. But I think the refreshing thing here, David, is like, yeah, he might not look like as wide as someone you'd see as a traditional fullback, but they're not necessarily thinking about him in that way, right? And this is what he said about him, right? He said, Xander's a pretty good athlete. Gabe did a good job last year catching the ball. All those things come in. You kind of figure out what you got, and if I can use it. Maybe he's not the traditional fullback. I wouldn't be surprised if Xander's in there in the preseason, got some runs, line him up as one back, see what he does there. I think there's a discovery process that'll happen with him, and Gabe will keep developing. We'll see how it falls out. But it is interesting because the wheels are spinning for them and what they can do with this dude. I mean, they're trying to give him carries. I mean, he did have a fumbling issue, but he also hurdled as many people as balls he fumbled onto the ground. So it does seem like at this point, at the very least, it seems a lot he's mentioning Gabe Neighbors, and I don't want to just put down Gabe Neighbors, but there's a certain level of intrigue that seems like it's coming from Joe Lombardi and this coaching staff surrounding Xander Horvath, his freakish athletic ability, and the sweet mustache.
It just seems like listening to that Joe Lombardi is just sitting back there, just like, Yes.
I mean, he was smiling when he was talking about it. Like, you
can
can see a twinkle in his eye for
Yeah,
sure.
let's see what I can do with this Xander Horvath here. I'm very excited. You could see that almost childlike excitement about how he's going to use Xander Horvath in the offense and what he's going to be able to do. And I'll be honest, I'm super excited to watch this guy in the preseason. And I'm putting the over under on hurdles at 3. I think we're going to see at least 3, and I think we're going to go more than that. No question about it.
3
And I'm
hurdles
here
in the
for it.
preseason?
I'm
Is that
here
what you
for
just
it.
said?
Yes, let's go.
I don't know. See, you're trying to make an NFL team, though. I don't know how much they want you hurdling, but I mean, I would definitely
It's a
love to see it
signature.
for sure. I mean, it is. And he also just runs like a mean dude, too. He also runs
Yes.
like super straight up and doesn't
Yes,
have
he
a lot of
does.
lateral quickness. But when you move like that, sometimes you don't need all those other things. He runs pretty decent routes, especially for a fullback. And
Yeah.
what also Joe Lombardi said is like, hey, sometimes when you have an obvious blitzing situation and it's 3rd and long and you need great pass protection from your running back, you might need to throw a big dude in there and not have Austin Eckler trying to take on 250-pound linebackers every time. So pass protection and things like that are going to
He
help.
can do it, but you don't
Yeah.
want him doing it every time.
100%. I'd rather send, Xander Horvath in there to just like look straight into a linebacker's eyes and like have the dude fall on the ground. He's so scared to take that dude on in the hole.
The power of the mustache.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems like they're intrigued. I'm intrigued. It's definitely a fun storyline. How much comes out of it? I'm not going to predict a breakout season for Xander Horvath to go along with Donald Parham, Trey McKitty, Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton, and Gerald Everett, everyone else. But I do think, they're intrigued. There was a lot of healthy scratches from Gabe Neighbors last year.
Yep.
But even if he's not a fully traditional fullback, you still have to do a lot of those things. So he's definitely has a learning curve. He's going to have to try to overcome.
Yeah, he's going to have to block guys. He's going to have to be able to meet guys in the hole. He's going to have to be able to protect the quarterback and pass protection. All of those things are part of being a fullback. It's not just here's the ball and go run. That's not going to be the responsibilities. You got to learn how to block to be a fullback in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Josh Kelly, too, is like as much as it's nice to see him looking a little quicker, looking like he's coming into camp in great shape, it's like, hey, you can't be whiffing on blocks or going to the wrong side when you have a blitzer coming off the other side and putting Justin Herbert's life in peril, right? And if I was any of these running backs, any of these fullbacks, I would literally just be faux pass protecting at all times throughout the day. I'd just be like walking to anywhere, just like whatever it takes.
Rashawn Slater on the cruise doing pass sets.
100%. 100% I would be, because it's like the one thing you can't do. I mean, second is probably fumble. Number 1 is don't let the golden boy Justin Herbert just get absolutely obliterated.
Don't let anyone touch him.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But speaking of the tackle situation and the non-Rashawn Slater tackle situation, Joe Lombardi did give a little bit of an update on that, just about what would decide that winning spot for the right tackle, whether it's Storm Norton or Trey Pipkins. He said consistency, guys that you can count on play in and play out. I think Storm Norton is just going to get better. And I think when Trey Pipkins, kind of like Josh Palmer, when Trey went in and played last year, it built some confidence, I think, in him and us having confidence in him. That's going to be a very important one. Right now, we're just here in helmets. We're not getting as much information. That'll start in a few days when we put the pads on. And the preseason games will be really important too. But I think that we're going to end up a lot better there, regardless of who wins that position. I have a really good feeling about our depth there as well. So, David, I guess I just want to ask, are you buying that? Are you buying that no matter who wins that position, that they're going to be a lot better, even when it's just the same 2 guys going for the same spot?
I don't know how you can say it's going to be a lot better. I mean, I understand.
It'd be hard to say it could be worse.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I definitely, I'm happy to hear that part of it. But I do think, just like I've said before, they know what they have with Rashawn Slater on the left side. And so I feel like they can probably plan a little bit more on the right side, no matter who is starting there at right tackle. But also, they have another year in the offense, and they have another year playing next to these other guys on the offensive line. And there's a lot of very good players on this offensive line that could, help them along. But yeah, this is clearly the most important battle. But also, nothing has happened yet, people. Yeah. This battle is not going to be decided until they put the pads on and they go up against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack for a couple of weeks straight. Then we'll really see where our right tackle situation is at that point in time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's when you'll know. The preseason is when you'll have a better idea, but you can't have two better tests. And that, like, and Joey Bosa said, like, hey, me and Khalil Mack are totally different rushers, right? So, like, I think that also helps your tackles in some sense, just because you're not seeing two dudes who are both just speed rushers, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no safety when you're out there. It's not safer when Joey Bosa lines up across you than it is when Khalil Mack. I mean, you're always in danger. It's always going to be a code red when you're lined up against either of those two. And it's a sink or swim situation right now for these guys trying to go out for right tackle. And you have to hope one of them runs away with it. You have to hope you see some Trey Pipkins, stonewalling Joey Bosa or Storm Norton, stonewalling Khalil Mack and not getting forklifted, which isn't, in its own way a win against Khalil Mack. And I think that, I think it could be better. I mean, to just blindly say that it will be a lot better, I just think is the leap that we can't take yet. You still have to see it in training camp, and more importantly,
a little too coach speak for me on that.
I mean, the offensive line should be better no matter what. That's the part you don't want to get misconstrued. I mean, you get Zion Johnson, you're going to have an upgrade at right guard as we see it and how we think it's going to play out.
Yeah.
And you should get at least moderately better at right tackle if these guys can improve from one season to the next, which is not out of the realm of possibilities. But
at all.
Just hard to feel confident in it. Maybe you can see those confidences start to get stacked on top of each other when these real live reps happen. And I'll be there on Monday to check that out, because I'll be going to the first padded practice August 1st after David put in the work this weekend. We'll be back with you guys on Monday to talk about the next two practices this week, because there's one today as you guys are listening to this, and there's also a Saturday practice as well. So we'll be back to recap the big winners from the first week of training camp on Monday. But until then, to make sure you guys don't miss it, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. Follow the show for free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast from, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever. And if you like the show, make sure to rate and review as well. We really, really appreciate it. If you guys want to get my updates on Monday from training camp, you can follow me on Twitter at DanTalkSports. And David's also been putting some great updates out there as well. If you want to see his stuff, you can go to DroTalkSD. And we put the show on all of our social media pages as well. So you can find us on Twitter at LockedOnLAC for the show's page, on our at Locked On Chargers Instagram page, or our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. So make sure you guys get in on that action, or you guys can always call into the voicemail line if you want to as well at 323-524-7924. If you have any training camp comments or questions, we always appreciate them and try to get them on the show. But training camp is here. We have practices pretty much every day, and we are stoked about it. So we'll be back on Monday to recap all of the latest coming out of training camp. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.